Hello, Luke. According to Forbes, Captain America Brave New World is the third worst reviewed MCU movie ever. Can you believe that?
No, I can't, because it had 4 reshoots, and of course, it comes on the back of some really successful Marvel movies.
Deadpool.
Yeah, that's been the only one that have happened recently. So yeah, it's been Marvel. I was not surprised when I saw it had like 50% on Rotten Tomatoes. I was not surprised when people were calling it slop and, had underdeveloped plot lines and was just an absolute mess. Yeah, of course it is, because for some reason, I don't know what's happened, they can't produce any good movies now, despite, again, like 4 reshoots, it being delayed by, about a year or at least 9 months. But yeah, they still can't get it right. It's kind of unbelievable, to be honest.
Brave New World, more like Bad New Universe, with reference to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, of course. Hello, and welcome to Select and Reflect, the movie review podcast where we look at films that have come out in the near and distant past. We give them a couple of watches and evaluate them beyond first impressions. I'm your host, Michael, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Luke. And this week, we are continuing to celebrate the forthcoming Oscars by looking at every single film that is nominated for a Best Picture at the Academy Awards. And we have we're doing them in pairs, and there is a consistent theme, and as you can tell from the title of this video, the theme today is movies about sex and also drugs. Sex and drugs and rock and roll. And the first movie we're reviewing in that regard is Anora. So Luke, why don't you tell us a thing or two about Anora?
Yes, Michael. So as you pointed out, there is we try to have a consistent theme when we are reviewing these movies that have been nominated for Best Picture at this year's Academy Awards, and these 2 movies, Anora and The Substance, are connected by what did you say they were connected by?
Sex and drugs.
Yeah, well, it's not really that, is it?
Well, like there is like a kind of a sexual aspect to these movies. There's a lot of in both these movies, although in both these movies at the beginning there are a lot of sexually titillating shots. I think it's fair to say.
Okay, yeah, but it's not about that though, is it?
Well, yeah, it's about drugs.
No, it's not about that though, is it?
It's about friendship. It's about
what
growing and learning together.
Why are you doing it? I don't understand. Like, is this a bit? Or are you genuinely confused?
Well, what do you perceive? I mean, it's about women. Is that like what you're going to say?
Oh wow, well done.
Yeah, okay, sorry, I didn't realize. Like, for me, I just noticed it as being a movie about people. Like, I didn't pick up that it was specifically about women.
It's incredible that you didn't, and it's incredible you didn't get that considering your other channel.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
purportedly claims to be apparently about women's rights or feminism or whatever. Which, and I think these 2 movies are females who, women being exploited in various industries, being sexually objectified, and we can go deeper into that. And again, Anora, it's not specifically about, a female experience, but again, there's not many male strippers, and there are a hell of a lot of female strippers compared to males. So yeah, it's a story which is uniquely female. You struggle to find a man in the situation that Anora finds herself in, right?
That is true.
Yeah. So anyway, let's get into Anora. It is a 2024 American comedy drama film produced, written, and directed and edited by Sean Baker. Wow, this is the Bradley Cooper of this year's awards.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so, yeah. I'm surprised he didn't star in it.
Yeah, it should have been Anora.
Yeah.
Yeah. Of course, he recently won Best Director at the Some Directors Award. Because
prestigious Some Directors Award.
Yeah, there's a bunch of like these awards that go around in award season.
Yeah, just jerk each other off.
Yeah, funnily enough, and Sean Baker won one of those awards. Yeah, so the Producers Guild of America Awards, Sean Baker and Anora won for Outstanding Producer of Theatrical Motion Picture. But yeah, anyway, he's been very successful, or this movie has at least. So yeah, let us get into it. It stars Mikey Madison, Mark fucking hell. What is this surname, man?
Oh, is it like a Russian name?
No. Eldel-Heshtien. What the Idel
is that like the Armenian guy?
No, it is Russian. Apparently it is Russian. So, well, I guess he speaks Russian, but it doesn't look like a stereotypical Russian surname. It's like Idelstein.
E-Y-N. Yeah, that is weird.
Idelstein. Anyway, Yuri Borisov. Well, that's much easier to say.
Yeah.
That's a Russian name. Karen Karagulian. Vacha Tovmasyan. Oh god, and Alexei Serebryakov. There we go, nailed it. Serebryakov. It was released on October the 18th, 2024 in the United States. And Michael, can you tell me what the budget was for Anora?
Well, I feel like this movie must have been kind of cheap because they're just in like a handful of buildings. I feel like there are pornos with less of a budget.
You mean more of a budget?
Oh, sorry, yeah, more of a budget. So I don't know. Like now I've set myself up to guess like quite low, but I don't want to like go crazy. I'm gonna say 10 million.
6.
Okay, so
6 million. Yeah, you're right. I mean, it must have been quite cheap to film. Again, it's just a bunch of rooms, and they're driving around a lot of the time, and obviously the actors there quite unknown. But what
you could say they're a complete unknown.
Shut up. What about the box office?
Now again, I don't know. I can't remember like whether there was a strong indication that this movie was like particular to streaming.
No.
Okay. 30 million?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
No, it's not 30 exactly, sorry. It's a good guess because it's 36.5. So,
okay, phew.
Yeah. if you square the budget, you get the box office. So a very successful movie. This made back 6 times its budget. But the question is, Michael, did you like Anora?
You know what, Luke? I'm scared. And the reason I'm scared is because people like this movie. I kind of found it a bit boring. You know that this guy, this Vanya guy, is like a man-child, and then so the main crux of the movie is about Anora. Like they're trying to like find this guy, and then Anora's trying to like maintain the relationship, even though we know because it's pretty obvious that he's actually a piece of crap. And I think obviously therefore the logic is the thing to get invested in is Anora's character, and like also some like the wacky stuff that happens because it is a bit of a farce. But for some reason, this was like a movie where at the end of it I was like, I don't know if I've ever just felt so kind of like neutral throughout a movie. Like even though like lots of stuff was happening, and like that seems really, really mean, even though like I mean I do have reasons for feeling like that, which I kind of half elaborated on. But yeah, for some reason I was just really like just neutral throughout this whole movie. Like every single time something was happening, I was just like, okay, yeah, that's happening now, as opposed to and yeah, I don't know if that makes me some kind of pleb.
It's not that thrilling. You where it goes, it's expected. What happens in the movie, I expect it to happen. And the question is...
That's a good way of putting it.
Yes. The question is, will Anora, at the end, get the better of the rich Russian family? Will she come out, on the other side, having won? And the answer is no. And do you know what movie it kind of reminded me of? It kind of reminded me of Knives Out. From Rian Johnson.
You know what? I still haven't seen the sequel to that, and that is to my discredit.
The sequel isn't that great, and it's called Glass Onion.
Yes,
of course, and the whole it's not that good. But
is it one of those like subversive sequels?
Yes, it is subversive, which of course is what Rian
just Johnson, like Joker 2.
Yeah, it's what Rian Johnson likes to do.
Yeah.
Like it's meant to be a mystery movie, but there is no mystery. That's kind of the point. But it's a glass onion. An onion has many layers. But it's made of glass.
You can see right through it. I see. That's actually I like that as a like title or like a pun.
Yeah. Anyway, but back to Knives Out, the first one, which came out in 2019, I think. This Knives Out movie was about a working class girl who happens to look like a supermodel, Ana de Armas, who was a nurse, and she gets left this inheritance from this rich old man. Who, of course, the family thinks, oh yeah, you've taken advantage of this old guy. Rather like in this movie, I don't think any of the Russians accuse Anora of taking advantage of Vanya.
Right. They kind of mention it, but they say it in like they know it's not true because he's like, I will get you arrested for being a fraud. Yeah, and it's like obviously
exactly. So it's kind of the same thing, but obviously the opposite ends of the age range. One of them is taking advantage supposedly of a senile old man. One of them of a young, immature, barely a man, kind of a boy. And of course in Knives Out, Ana de Armas's character does win. She does get the inheritance money, and it's a nice message overall.
That's not very subversive.
No.
What a hack.
No, but what keeps you going throughout the movie, in that movie Knives Out, is it's a mystery. What actually happened to this old guy?
Yes.
How did he actually die? And of course, at the end, you find out. And in this movie, there is no mystery. And she comes out the other side of it. kind of feeling depressed, and she only gets 10k out of it instead of
I was gonna say, like, it's a bit weird that she didn't like mention, like, when she gets offered that, I was thinking, like, shouldn't she at least mention, by the way, I got 15k just for spending a week with him, so like, the standard has been set, and 10k for this is actually you might think that's a lot of money to me, but I ball hard.
I would have said, don't give me 10k, give me like 100k. It's not like they can't afford it. So there you go, 100k. They probably would have said yes, because they'd been like, fine, let's just end it. Again, that could be a nitpick, but so that's why overall I wasn't that. It wasn't as good, for instance, as another movie with a similar sort of plot line in Knives Out, and therefore the movie has to rely on like Annie's character, or that has to be the backbone. That has to keep you invested, like Annie herself.
Yes.
What's happening with her, and her character is pretty. It's not one dimensional. I won't say that. It's not. She isn't one dimensional, but she is barely two dimensional. She's she's a real person. Like I could believe a character like this exists, and I think that's what Sean Baker tries to do in his movies, is create like realistic characters. And this character is certainly a realistic character, but that's the problem. There's nothing that unique or interesting about her, apart from maybe one aspect, which is she's a bit too naive about thinking where is this going to go.
Which is like, and sorry, I mean, not to like get too much into it, but like the one thing about that is then you're kind of like, well, does that sort of contradict with the fact that otherwise she seems a bit kind of like she can handle herself? I don't know if it's exactly like a strict contradiction, but I was thinking it's kind of like weird that, on the one hand she's like, hey, what the fuck are you doing? I know what I'm doing. But then she's also like,
do not fucking touch me.
Yeah, okay? And it's like, me and Vanya are in love. I'm not
So the contrast between this hard outer shell and then inside she still believes that she and Vanya have a future together, and that is kind of interesting.
You could say it's a cognitive dissonance.
And and that contradiction is the one area of her character where okay, there's something here, here. But of course there's nothing really else to that, to her character. So I do think this movie, you said it was boring. I knew you'd say it was boring.
Good. I'm glad. Obviously it's good, because the fact you knew that means I'm consistent,
and I was not thinking that up until a certain point, which I'll talk about, where it was clear this is the direction the movie's going to go. It's got no more surprises up its sleeve, and therefore what's going to happen throughout the next like hour or 45 minutes until the end of the movie, it was to be expected, and what I expected happened, and it wasn't that entertaining, unfortunately, but it's not a bad movie. I would say it's above average, but let's get into it.
Yes. So Anora, a sex worker from Brooklyn, gets her chance at a Cinderella story when she meets and impulsively marries the son of an oligarch. Once the news reaches Russia, her fairy tale is threatened as the parents set out for New York to get the marriage annulled. That's like a very competently written summary, but it also reads like it was written by it reads like kind of a very stereotypical, like it reads like the blurb you'd have on the back of a VHS or something.
Well, that is from that website.
That makes sense. I'm glad they have that.
Of course, it says in this blurb, it's a Cinderella story, and she's going through this she's in the midst of this fairy tale, and that is kind of the point. Of course, she even mentions Cinderella at one point. Of course. She's talking about how she wants to get married, I think, at Disney World. The blurb calls it a fairy tale, and it is kind of a fairy tale. Like, it's a modern fairy tale up until a point, and then the question is, okay, what's going to happen with Anora? Is she going to get her fairy tale ending? And, of course, the answer is no. It is... I like that aspect about it, and if you look at the movie as, like, a fairy tale, I think you can appreciate it more, which is what I did, and it's why I maybe will have enjoyed it a bit more than you, because you can then look at things in the movie and they're like, I get why that's happening. And overall, Sean Baker, I think, likes to do these movies where he looks at people who are I won't say on the outskirts of society, but on the lower rungs of society, and puts them in these unusual situations, shall we say.
Yes.
Then the movie happens. By the way, do you have any nitpicks?
Well, you know what, actually, I don't have any nitpicks, but I do kind of have a lit pick.
Okay,
I sort of have. So here's the thing. Recently, I thought, there's this thing called the Oscars. I'm going to watch every single film nominated for Best Picture sequentially. That's the background story. So literally starting with the first Oscars. So that's what I've been doing, Luke. Like on the sly, casually, I've been watching those movies that were nominated for the best
be-
Oscar in 1928.
It must be so great to be unemployed.
I know, yeah, it is pretty fun. But here's the thing, right? The movie I watched, literally, so it was like yesterday, but the movie I watched before Anora was a movie called Glorious Betsy, which is literally about a southern plantation belle in 1804 who gets married to a French aristocrat, and her family objects to the marriage and tries to force them to get it annulled.
Okay.
And here's the real twist: that family member, Napoleon Bonaparte. It was a wild time. I was like, oh man, I didn't realize that back in 1928 they were nominating movies about slave owners getting married to Napoleon Bonaparte's brother. But like, I just think that was like a really like weird parallel. I was like,
okay,
oh wow, that's crazy.
Now that we can mark that down as a win pick.
Yeah,
sure.
it is a worse movie for the record. It's actually not a good movie.
Okay, so my nitpick is that I don't know if you're aware of this, but Mikey Madison, who of course plays Anora,
has a man's name. Yeah, I was going to bring that up too.
Well, her name isn't actually Mikey. I don't know what it is, but it's not. That's anyway. I don't know if it's a pseudonym, but her first name isn't Mikey. But whatever. She was offered an intimacy coordinator. I don't know if you know what. What do you know what one of those is?
So, like, presumably, like someone who helps you like do a convincing job at faking having sex.
No.
Okay, that's what I thought it was. Okay.
Not someone who could helps you do a convincing job. Someone who makes sure you're okay.
Oh,
you know?
I see. Okay, that's fun.
Yeah, like obviously because you're exposing yourself, and
yeah.
you know you want to make sure you're comfortable. And again, it's incredible what your other channel purportedly.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't realize that women were concerned about these things.
Yeah, no, your mind goes to you want to make sure
you want to make sure you're doing a good job.
Yeah. She's
that's what human resources are. They give women who are humans, I've learned, the resources to just wear shorter skirts.
Yeah, so an intimacy coordinator is often used. I don't know when this started. Probably since the Me Too movement,
yes,
or somewhere around there. Is used because you have these sex scenes. Okay, we want to make sure everything's okay, that the actors are comfortable, and everything's above board. But Mikey Madison declined an intimacy coordinator. Yeah, which she absolutely should not have done, because she I'm being sarcastic.
Yeah, you're victim blaming, Luke.
I'm being sarcastic because there was this controversy on Twitter, because you know how Twitter is often insane.
Yes.
I just saw these.
It's getting better now though, because it's been de-woked.
Well, it was a very almost like woke thing to say. It's like, no, it doesn't matter that she didn't want an intimacy coordinator and was comfortable with that one. No, she should have had one.
Yeah, I see. Yeah. Because it sets a bad. It's like how Keir Starmer's a hero because he got tested for AIDS. Because it doesn't matter. Like, even if you don't think you have AIDS, even if your wife's not been banging people on the side.
Okay, right. Yeah,
you should still get tested.
Okay, thank you for that. But yeah, so I think that's even if she consented to not having one, doesn't matter. It should
have been forced on her. I see. Yeah, that's a good point. Actually,
that's what should have happened according to these people. You should have had someone else, a stranger, come in and be involved in those sex scenes, even though she didn't want one, because that would have been the that would have been the feminist thing to do.
Yeah, I'm liking it. It's kind of like the myth of consensual. Consensually rejecting a intimacy coordinator.
Yeah.
I consent. Twitter's like, I don't.
No, I don't. No. Someone should have.
Someone you forgot to ask.
Yeah. So let's get into the movie now.
Anora, Annie Mikchieva, do they ever even say her surname, is a 23-year-old stripper living in Brighton Beach, a Russian-American neighborhood in Brooklyn. Her boss introduces her to Ivan Vanya Zakharov, the son of Russian oligarch Nikolai Zakharov. It's a fun, inciting incident.
Oh, no. So obviously we need to start off with how the movie starts, which is, of course, she's...
Take That.
Sorry?
They play the song Take That, like, the song by Take That. Stay close to me.
You just see the life of a stripper, a day in the life of this girl who was a stripper, Anora, or Annie. She basically has to be a professional friend.
Yes, it is interesting, like that aspect of it.
And look, man, I have not been to many strip clubs in my time.
No.
I just can't imagine doing that and having someone come over to you and be like, hey, how's it going?
I
What's your
hate
name?
talking to women in general.
Well, but they're clearly pretending to be your friend.
Yeah.
How naive or just pathetic do you have to be to go along with it?
Yeah.
And if you're there for like, hey, I just want this girl to fucking twerk on me. All right, that's I can at least respect that, even if there are some moral issues perhaps with that, but at least you know what you're doing to get there.
Yeah.
Apparently now strippers have to be your friend, and again, I assume this is realistic, but it's just like her doing all that. It's just kind of depressing to see her do that. And then it's just the whole situation, I think, is the reason why that is shown at the start is to show how like depressing and pathetic like the situation is, how hollow
artificial
being a stripper is. And I think people already knew that, but I just like how the start just fully, you can see that fully at the start. And as a man, I'm saying that, as a man,
as a woke man,
as a hero. No, but that's the point. As a man, you might look at this and be like, oh yeah, damn, this looks like a cool place. I'd love to go there. But I have the opposite reaction. And maybe that is because I am woke, or maybe it's that Sean Baker communicated how kind of pathetic these relationships are between the strippers and their clients, or how pathetic they can be, at least as shown in this movie.
Yeah, like I definitely thought it was awkward. The other thing I'll actually like very briefly say, and this is barely relevant, but like for some reason the flashback made me think about not the flashback, sorry, like the flashiness of it and like the way it was. It made me think of Promising Young Women, and like I didn't want to say like, obviously I'm a mature person, so I'm not going to be like, mature isn't really the right word, but I'm not going to be like, oh, this movie reminded me of a movie that I remember being kind of bad. But like when it was just like all flashy and it was like playing pop music, I was like, this is just like the opening of Promising Young Woman. I hope this movie isn't bad. But don't worry, this movie is better than Promising Young Woman.
It is, yeah. Also, this Nikolai guy, maybe this should have been, sorry, not Nikolai, Vanya guy.
Yes.
Should have been a nitpick, perhaps. How is he in the United States? Haven't Russia invaded Ukraine?
What? I was thinking that too, actually. Like, I was like, is this movie just like not acknowledging the fact it's set during a different time? Like, is it like actually this movie set in like 2018 or something? They just But then they should have had like a scene where, I would have given this movie a lit pick if there was like a moment where someone said, "Oh, Donald Trump has just been elected for the first time." Like, okay.
No, look, I don't know what's going on with Russians immigrating to the United States. Of course, he is the son of an oligarch, but these oligarchs are meant to be close to Putin. So
yes,
what's going on? Although I do believe that even Putin's kids do actually live in Europe. So if his kids live in Europe, then I imagine that you can have some random oligarch who could live in Russia. Live in the United. Some random oligarch's son who can live in the United States and it not be an issue. But I thought they may have at one point mentioned Ukraine, but I guess Sean Baker thinks that the Ukraine war. The Russians are doing the right thing in Ukraine, fighting against NATO imperialism. Yeah. So he wants to.
This movie is actually Zone of Interest.
Yeah, he wants to portray a movie where there are no consequences for Russian oligarchs and their sons, as there shouldn't be, of course. Because of what Zelensky's doing over there.
Yeah, because of these doing loads of coke, I think. So Vanya is in the US to study, but prefers to party and play video games in his family's mansion. Vanya hires Annie for several sexual encounters and pays her $15,000 to stay with him for a week. Now, there's one thing I'll say. I know that you like me to not look up details about films, and I think because I'm so used to you asking me that. And also the fact that
I didn't ask you.
I know you didn't. Yeah, you didn't ask me that for this film. But also, it might shock you to hear that sometimes I'm pretty good at not actually knowing anything about what's happening with regards to a film, or indeed pop culture in general. Like I have an idea about it. So when I went into this movie, I realized around this point that I had no idea what genre it was. So I will say the first time I watched this film, I had a very interesting experience. For this whole time, I was thinking like, is this, because I was like, this is going to go two ways. Either it's like actually just going to be a romantic film throughout. And to be fair, it didn't go either of the two ways I thought it was going to go. I thought either it's going to be a romantic film throughout, or there's going to be some kind of like inciting incident where like basically you discover it's like a criminal thing. That did admittedly go away when he like made a joke about being a drug dealer, but I was like thinking like, like there's going to be a stripper or something and she's going to get killed by one of like Ivan's guys, and then Ivan's going to like try and cover it up. And that's what happens when you don't look up the genre for a movie before you watch it. I mean, that's just it. Like the whole, like I just wanted you to know that part of my experience the first time I was watching this was like not having any idea where the movie was going to go at all, and it made me think, man, sometimes it's crazy when you don't even like. Maybe I should check the genre just so I have a vague idea of what to expect.
Yeah, I knew what this movie, because I'd seen some clips on Twitter. The home invasion. I saw that before I watched the movie, so I knew what was going to happen. And again, it's after that where I was like, okay, what's going to go down after this? And that's where, of course, what I expected to happen did happen, which was, of course, not that great. But yes, I just want to talk about Ivan. Or what's he called? Vanya. That's his nickname. Let's call him Vanya, because that's what everyone calls him. I just love how much Sean Baker nailed this guy. Like, he's such a Gen Z foreign guy You know,
Oh, yeah.
he's got a lot of money. It's like, yeah, like, you know, like, come to my house, we have sex. Yeah, I play my video game. The point is that Sean Baker got the archetype spot on of this, Gen Z foreign guy who's like, you know, really wealthy. And yeah, because I've met people not as rich as this guy, but I've met people who are like this, who are foreign. And yeah, it's just, especially at university, you know.
Yeah.
And yeah, this guy is quite similar to that. You know, he loves the US culture, doesn't really know a lot about it. Also, these sex scenes, right, from Mikey Madsen.
Yeah, would you say they're hot?
Well, is that your first thought? Of course.
Well, I thought like it was pretty salacious.
Yes,
is that the expression?
Yes. So even though I don't have a feminist YouTube channel, I didn't. My first thought wasn't, oh, this is hot. Although I will concede, of course, that she's an attractive woman.
Yeah.
But I thought, well, you know what? She's really going for it in terms of like, you know, how many sex scenes are there? It's not as much as
it's crazy.
There's not as much as Emma Stone in Poor Things, I think. But of course, she may get an Oscar for this. It's either going to be her or Demi Moore. And yeah, I was just, of course, thinking about Emma Stone. You know, she, you know, in Poor Things had so many of these kind of scenes, and she won, the Oscar for Best Actress. So that apparently is the formula now for.
Yeah, you just got to bang. Which is, you'd almost felt it's something like meta about that, like the fact they have to, like the way you win an Oscar is by. Did Emma Stone have an intimacy coordinator?
If you are a female, of course.
Yes.
You know, that's crucial. And yeah, of course, you have to be this exploited sex object, and that's what gets you the Oscar for Best Actress. But yeah, well, Demi Moore, of course, isn't that in the substance, but.
Then what's her face is the Margaret Quayle or whatever her name is.
Yeah, that's it. You nailed it.
Margaret Quaalude.
But she is not nominated for Best Actress.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
What a hack job.
Yeah.
I do. Well, I agree with you that. Yeah, I guess it's because it shows they're willing. It's like when Leonardo DiCaprio just said to eat that raw liver. I guess that's what it is for men. You've got to eat a literal raw organ, whereas for women, you just got to simulate taking one.
Great.
Anyway, so when Vanya and his entourage fly to Las Vegas, where Vanya asks Annie to marry him so that he can obtain a green card instead of returning to Russia to work for his father. Annie is skeptical, but Vanya insists his love is genuine, and they elope to a Vegas wedding chapel. Yeah, I will say, like, when you've like seen the movie the first time and then you do know like how it ends, I feel like this whole stuff feels like maybe more pointless. I don't know, like there's still like the kind of the experience of like you can recognize what she's going through. So it's not like a huge thing that like negative affects it on a rewatch. But obviously when you're seeing like, no, I am serious, I really want to do this. And you're like, but I know he's not. I mean, I'm not saying like it's the worst thing whenever that happens in the movie, but I don't know. That was my thoughts. Did you have any like sense of that?
We are meant to think that, I think.
Yeah.
And I think the point is, Annie isn't meant to think that. So, of course, it says on Wikipedia, Annie is skeptical. That's what it says.
Yes.
On Wikipedia, is Annie skeptical? You know, she doesn't know. She doesn't know if it's serious, but she doesn't think it's a bad idea. You know, and I don't think she sees him as a whale, as one of the other strippers says. No, this is her dream come true. This is her Cinderella story. Yeah. Vanya is this prince, and you could say that is immature, but again, that is part of her character. You know, she likes to dream. I guess that is one aspect of her characterization. I will say though, I think Vanya, you can criticize Annie for maybe being a bit too immature, but I don't think it's that unrealistic. But Vanya, I do think is a bit too immature because yes, he treats Anora like this pet that he just like fucks once in a while. I can completely see some rich kid doing that, but yeah, marrying her to stay in the United States is on another level. If he did it when he was intoxicated, then perhaps I'd buy it, but yeah, I think he'd try and find another way, and he would know his family would not accept it. Like he must understand the consequences. Once his family finds out, he must understand, oh shit, what's going to happen. So yeah, I think if he were to do this, then the next step would be, okay, let's run away. Let's go to some place my family can't find me. That because obviously they're going to try and cancel it. Like I don't think he's that dumb and that immature not to think about what happens next.
Yeah, I would say that. Yeah, like he's very. I mean, yeah, he's a real stupid guy. And I'd say he's definitely, a lot of his characteristics are exaggerated to say the least. Yeah. All right. When news of the wedding spreads to Russia, Vanya's mother orders his godfather, Toros, to find them and get an annulment. Toros sends his henchmen, Garnek and Igor, to the house. They inform Vanya that his parents will take him back to Russia and enrage Annie by calling her a prostitute. Vanya flees, and Annie fights Garnick and Igor, injuring them and destroying furniture. So this is when like you kind of establish the direction the movie's going to go. In that one, for me, like I'm like, oh okay, this is a farce. Like that was a word I used to describe it. I was like, okay, like that's cool. I'm glad I know what this movie is.
Yeah.
And obviously the question I'm then thinking is, oh, you know, like how entertaining is it going to be as a farce? Like really ridiculous and over the top. And we'll see. And then the other thing is, I'm also like, oh, okay, so like at this point I'm like, well, Vanya's clearly like a twat, like without ambiguity, and I'm like, okay, at this point I'm kind of like not that invested in the relationship.
Yes.
Because obviously he like just runs away.
Yeah. No,
yeah,
but
it is entertaining.
I just want to say it is a great scene, and
yes.
it is a comedic scene, which, given the context, you might not have expected that. And I think that's what you were saying before about,
yes,
these thugs show up, you know, maybe they actually kill, you know, what do you call Annie? And I think she prefers to be called Annie and not Anora. I'm not sure.
Yeah. But then, like, I don't know, maybe in a way, in some sense, she doesn't know what she prefers because, you know.
Yeah. So this is the turn the movie is taking, which again I already, knew about. It's what happens afterwards, which I was kind of invested in, or what's going to happen next. But also, I think the henchman coming to the house is the equivalent to. This is back to the fairy tale aspect. It is equivalent to the clock striking midnight in Cinderella.
That's a beautiful analogy, Luke.
What do you mean? It's a beautiful analogy.
Like, just like I never thought of it like that, and to hear you say it so plainly.
No, I'm not. No, don't mock me.
No, I mean, no, to be fair, you're right in your thing. It's just like the way you, like something about like saying like it's the clock striking 12. It feels like something.
I said midnight, by the way.
Oh, sorry, it's the clock. Yeah, it's the clock striking midnight. I mean, that actually sounds even better. Yeah, it's the clock striking midnight. Something about it just feels like you're like pathos, like you're trying to like be evocative. It's like, even though I don't actually think you're being disingenuous.
I'm not. I'm just trying to connect it back to the fairy tale theme, and because the fairy tale theme exists, and this is the similarity I think to Cinderella, and I do wonder if the fact that Vanya's parents will be arriving in New York at noon is a reference to that. Because the clock strikes at midnight.
Yes.
And noon is, of course, the opposite of midnight. But it's 12.
Yeah, midnight is noon's naughty little cousin, as they say.
What the fuck are you talking about?
Like midnight is like because like noon's like pretty boring and like pretty easygoing.
What phrase is that? Naughty little cousin.
I don't know. Like I wanted to say something that was like alliterative, but naughty little nephew. Midnight's noon's naughty little nephew.
You just sound gay and weird.
Thank you.
Just being weird. Okay.
Proceed, Luke.
Yeah, the 25-minute home invasion scene took 10 days to film, by the way.
I actually did not realize that seems 25 minutes.
Yeah. Well, when of course Toros comes and
I suppose it does take a while. Yeah. How long did it take to film?
10 days.
Okay, that's interesting because I feel like they'd have to like reset up all the broken props and stuff, and like give that guy his bloody nose again. So like. Is there anything more to that in terms of why it took so long? No,
I mean it just must have taken a while because it's 25 minutes. Again, I was surprised by that, but I just thought I'd include that because it's an interesting factoid. So
I would absolutely agree. Anyway, so Toros arrives and lectures Annie about Vanya's immaturity, takes her wedding ring, has her gagged, and offers her 10,000 to accept the annulment. Annie insists that she and Vanya are in love, but agrees to help Toros find him. Annie, Toros, Garnick, and Igor spend the night looking for Vanya. Yeah, so for me, this is like a moment where I'm like, okay, this is kind of weird, because like the fact that Annie still thinks like Vanya is in love with her, like for me, and obviously like this is like about her character, but it's like not necessarily something I'd expect, because obviously you would think, well, like she's a stripper, like she knows the stuff. Like obviously as soon as it becomes clear that he's like not even told his parents, you're like, okay, this guy is clearly not serious enough to actually like face any challenges that this relationship might face. Therefore he's not actually going to be as sufficiently invested in this relationship as he should be in order for like this to actually work. And like I get that like she didn't really think that, but it does, like it definitely makes it come across as very naive that she's like, no, we're in love.
Yeah, so I thought Annie, when she was standing her ground, saying, oh no, we're in love, I'm his wife, she was saying that to get leverage.
I was kind of thinking that too. Like there was some kind of like ulterior motive.
Yeah, because she's hard nosed. Okay, well I kind of like this guy, but also I know actually what's going on here. No, I'm going to get some leverage out of it. Well, I have leverage, so I'm going to instead of get I'm not going to get 10 grand. I'm going to get, for instance, 100 grand instead. But it does seem like she genuinely believes he loves her, and she at least loves him to some degree. And yeah, maybe she does think she is in this fairy tale. Yeah, I think the message of the movie is perhaps, these fairy tales don't exist in the modern world. And I think that is, again, the one interesting aspect of her character. You know, she has these dreams. She still believes in these dreams. But yeah, obviously, we find out that these dreams are not going to come true. Which, it is quite. I think possibly another director who had this thought or this idea would have made Annie less naive. So it's a dimension to her character that I at least appreciate. Also, again, back to the Cinderella comparisons, which apparently you don't like, but I'll make one more. So you know how in Cinderella the prince goes looking for her after the ball.
Yes, and she goes looking for him.
Yes,
while he's doing an 8-ball.
Yes, it's the opposite in this movie. Annie. Fucking hell.
Yeah, this is why the marriage couldn't have worked. They have way too similar names.
Annie goes looking for Vanya. Yeah. God, imagine if she was called Anya. Anya and Vanya. No, but and Annie goes looking for Vanya instead of course, Vanya going looking for Annie. Again, it's kind of the opposite of a fairy tale.
Well, I'm picking up what you're putting down.
Yeah, it sets up a fairy tale, but then it kind of flips it around because, fairy tales unfortunately don't really exist in the modern day. But let's continue.
Yes, absolutely. So, Annie catches Vanya drunk with a stripper at her former workplace. The next day, the annulment is thrown out of court as Annie and Vanya were wed in Nevada. So yeah, again, this is where you reinforce the fact that she is, very, very naive. The fact she's still even when she's caught, basically cheating on her, she's and at this point I was thinking to myself, this would make a lot more sense if she wanted his money, because on some level they never really clearly established the moment where it transitions to, oh, this is a guy who I want to get £15,000 from him just to spend a week with him.
Dollars.
It's basically nothing. To oh, actually, this is a guy who I'm gonna passionately argue we're in love, as if she's
I think it's
invested in the marriage itself.
I think it's the scene in Vegas when he proposes to her, and we have this long lingering shot on her, which I should have mentioned, where she goes from, wait, is this serious? Well, I kind of mentioned that, is this guy actually serious? Okay, if he is, then yeah, wow, I didn't realize he actually felt that way about me. And she is overjoyed, and she is not a cynical character, despite her, her outer appearance. I do think, I just want to talk about this part of the movie because I think there is a lot of swearing in this part of the movie, and there is a lot of actors doing improv, and it's quite fast paced. And I think the home invasion scene stood out, and I enjoyed it because it came out of nowhere. There was a lot of violence, a lot of swearing, a lot of chaos. It was, as you say, a farce. But then there is so much farcical happenings after that, and the farce just keeps on happening, and the swearing keeps happening. And it's the violence, not exactly violence, but there's there's destruction, aggression, and it just keeps happening after this. And I do think that for me it gets a bit tiring. Yeah,
I would agree. So I also, because it's interesting, we kind of just in my recount there, kind of just skipped over they go to all sorts of different places, and the car gets cancelled, all that kind of stuff. But the thing is, it is all just a bit kind of boring. Again, if it was, I kind of already set up when I was when I worked out the film was going to be a farce, the question I was then thinking is, how farcical is this going to get? Is this going to get crazy? Are we going to have all sorts of bizarre things happening? And it just gets more and more insane, and it doesn't really. It's kind of just
if it gets more insane, that would be something else, but it doesn't get more insane. It just kind of goes in the direction that was established with the home invasion scene, and there's nothing that interesting about it. And I guess you could say, well, it's a consequence of Annie's character. People keep trying to put her down, but she is this fighter, so you're naturally going to have these scenes. It's a consequence of writing this character and putting her in this situation. But it's still a bit. It's a bit too much, and I just felt it's clear this is the comedy aspect of the film. This is where you should get your laughs.
I didn't find this film I think the kind of pretty much in keep with what you said, the home invasion scene, I didn't laugh, but I was okay, I can tell
it was
this is
entertaining.
Funny. Yes, whereas here I would just say
I was not entertained.
I was very neutral faced.
Anyway,
so Annie introduces herself to Nikolai and Vanya's mother Galinka, but okay, I don't know why I said a K there. But Galina is contemptuous of Annie. Vanya concedes to his parents and coldly tells Annie that their marriage is impossible. Annie threatens divorce proceedings, but Galina threatens to destroy her life. Recognizing Vanya's immaturity and his family's power, Annie agrees to the annulment. Yeah, this is like, it's kind of an interesting moment because it's like you get like a whiplash in the moment where she's like, oh, actually, I'm going to get a lawyer and I'm going to screw you over. I was like, oh, this is like I was like, oh, that's something. Because, like it's a moment where she suddenly seems very kind of powerful, I guess. But then obviously it just radically switches to, actually, no, you haven't got any power.
Yes.
Get over it, loser.
Yes. And of course, I want to talk about when she, offers to shake his mother's hand, because she is still acting like the marriage could happen, and again, she thought it was real. She thought she was still Cinderella. And it's just, I'm watching this and I'm thinking, well, there's no way that, like they've flown all the way over to the United States because they dislike you. I don't know how you think, that she's going to shake your hand and be like, okay, welcome to the family. But yeah, she gets this dose of reality, of course, when Vanya says that their time was just fun.
Yeah. And it's like, what, are you stupid?
Yeah, it was of course so much more to Annie, and she's just on a different level. And again, if we talk about, their positions in society, the class difference there, it's stark, and he's he's about to get on this private plane and, he's going to live the rest of his life in luxury. And, it was just fun. I'm sorry, but, just saying it so casually. And for her, this, of course, was life-changing. And you could criticize the fact that this moment exists because, well, would Annie be that naive? Again, I'm like, would she be that naive? Would anyone be that naive? But I guess that's the whole point. She thinks she is in this fairy tale, so therefore you have to be somewhat naive. But yeah.
Yeah, so Igor suggests that Vanya apologize to Annie, but Galina insists that her son will not apologize to anyone. Annie insults Vanya and Galina and leaves. Here's one thing about Igor. The thing about this is, like, I thought it was a bit weird because Igor, like, you kind of, it becomes more and more obvious that he's actually, like, kind of a decent guy who's, like, very sympathetic. The problem is, for me personally, almost right from the beginning, I was like, oh, this guy actually seems like he's kind of like a fun, nice guy. Like, even though I know that's a weird thing to say because he's like tying her up, but like you get the impression. I mean, obviously they're both kind of silly about it, but I don't know what it is. But when I first watched the film, I was like, oh, I like right away I was picking up good vibes from Igor, which is in a way like, oh, good. Obviously like the fact he was characterizing him, the fact I can't really describe it means maybe it was like a subtle thing, and that's really kind of creditable in terms of the performance or like the dialogue. But then it also kind of means like. It's just like obviously the kind of enduring criticism is that there's a point where you realize what's going to happen in the film and then just that stuff happens. So it's kind of like very early on, once Igor's introduced, I'm like, oh, this guy seems like he's kind of actually a decent guy who, doesn't really want to be doing any of the bad stuff he's doing, but it's just, what he's got to do. And there's like lots of moments that, well, as many moments as there can be in, a film of limited length. That establish that. So then, like, when obviously here and kind of later on, you establish, oh, actually he is kind of a more sympathetic guy. And this is probably the biggest moment. It's like, well, that's just another moment where the film's just showing us a thing that, was kind of just happening already.
Yeah, and that is a good point. But I do want to talk about his character because, again, right from the start, you can tell, like you said, he is unusual. Like, he's this henchman, but he's sympathetic. Well, that's a weird combination.
Yes.
He doesn't act like a normal henchman. And again, I kept thinking, well, this is quite unrealistic. I can't imagine a henchman having sympathy and acting like Igor does to Annie. And in Hans is maybe the point, he has sympathy for her also because of his class, because he is also working class at the bottom end of society, and he can see the world through, or the bottom rung of society. He can see the world through Annie's eyes. He can see what she's trying to do, how close she is to achieving this dream, and he feels quite shit pulling her away from that, perhaps, as well. So yeah, I think it's an interesting character. Again, I don't know how realistic it is, but yeah, it is. This guy got nominated for Best Supporting Actor. Well. So yeah, got Yuri Borisov, I think he's called. So yeah, I think it was good. It was interesting, although again, that's the thing with this movie. It's interesting, but I don't know how realistic it might be. But yeah.
Yes. Well, Igor takes Annie back to New York. They spend the final night at the mansion. In the morning, Igor gives Annie the money and drives her home. In the car, he returns Annie's wedding ring to her. Annie initiates sex with Igor, but hesitates when he attempts to kiss her. She breaks down, sobbing in his arms. So, obviously, I think the reason why she's kind of crying, apart from just the, delayed reaction or, the fact that all that stuff has happened to her. So like
Mm-hmm.
I would probably feel like crying at that point after that whole ordeal.
Yeah.
But like this, I guess it's because like my interpretation of why it's at that specific moment is something to do with the fact that like maybe she's forming a more meaningful connection with him that is more authentic, and she's like resistant to that. I don't know, like that might be.
Well, I have a theory.
Yes.
So it's a reveal of who she is in the movie, or who she really is. She is this, of course, sex worker. And when someone is genuine with her and almost unlocks her, we see her true anger and then the sadness inside her from this whole episode. Okay, she initiates sex with him because she is a sex worker. That's what that's what she does. But then, well, it's a genuine kiss that Igor has for
Yes.
for Annie. So that is genuine, and that again unlocks her. That reveals her genuine self. And she's not just she stops being like this sex worker with a hard outer shell. We see again this anger that she has inside with what has happened to her, with how she's been treated, and then again the sadness of what she has just experienced, how she's just been demeaned, how she's just had this life that she was expecting to get or hoping to get being ripped away from her. She finally lets her guard down. As Igor is basically her equal, I think. And yeah, I guess that is the depressing ending to the movie, which I did kind of like because I didn't expect it. I've criticized the movie, and I'll just conclude now. I've criticized the movie, I think, for once the home invasion happens and Vanya runs off, I'm like, okay, what's going to happen is his family's going to come and they're going to make sure that Annie annuls the wedding, and because of course we have seen how immature Vanya is going to disappoint Annie and basically be a coward and be like, yeah, no, the wedding's not happening. That is what is going to happen, and that is indeed what happened. So I wasn't really surprised, and then at the end, again, this is something which is a bit unexpected, something that I didn't really think would happen. And I do think this movie I'm going to give it a higher rating because I do appreciate seeing this movie through a fairy tale lens, I guess, and therefore it becomes more interesting to me. But yeah, overall, it's a good movie. It's solid, but it's not that great. It's not that interesting, but it's not well. Again, it's above average. It's a 7.5 for me. But yeah.
Okay, that is a better rating than I was going to give it. And yeah, I mean, I've struggled with this because what I said at the beginning is like this is a movie where I was just completely neutral. Like I was just like watching, I was just like I don't really feel. And I think like for me, the big issue with this film is like for it to work, I would need to feel some kind of like strong emotion, because there are like moments in this movie which would really be emotional, but the problem is I just couldn't connect with it emotionally, and I feel like I always went a bit weird. Whereas I feel like without that emotion, there's not that much in this film, and then you add on top of that the fact it is 2 hours and 20 minutes, which is approaching quite long. So I think for a movie to be that long, anyway, the upshot was I was actually going to give it a high 5, which I know sounds like pretty bad, but it's just like for me, like when I think about the experience of watching the movie, I'm like, no, I was actually like pretty like, ugh, and to like that's at best just above average to be like, ugh, okay, because there were like just too many moments in this movie for me where I was like way too checked out, which again, and I think actually like if this film was slightly cut down, like maybe that could help, but yeah, maybe it sounds a bit harsh, but yeah, it's a reflection of my experience.
What did
I'm afraid a high 5.
Okay. Yeah, again, I think, it's...
But I mean, I do like your, like, fairy tale angle. And again, like, to be fair, like, if the film had, like, in some way, and I don't want to be, like, obviously it couldn't lean into it too much because that would be too obvious, but, like, if there were, like, loads of really, really, like, interesting fairy tale angles, or, like, parallels, like, that actually sounds like a really interesting idea to kind of do, like, a film that has all these, like, parallels with fairy tales, and I like that idea, but, yeah, I'm not sure if this film's, like, obviously, like I say, it's a very long film. I'm not sure if it like touches on that enough for me to be like, oh yeah, it's really great because it's the subversion. But I do like that as an idea.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess that is the difference between us. But what are we talking about next?
Next, we're talking about here a film where, Luke, you might be shocked to hear that I was not completely neutral in my feelings throughout this film. We reviewed the movie The Substance. So Luke, why don't you tell us a thing or two about The Substance?
What do you mean neutral?
Well, now, like I said, like with thinking, I don't really know what the word is for it, but I was just kind of like I didn't have any strong reaction to Anora.
You did have a strong reaction to this, yes.
Yeah, like I know that might shock you.
Yes. Well, yeah, because there's more stuff going on in this movie for sure. It's we'll have more takes on this movie perhaps. So, The Substance is a 2024 body horror film written and directed by Gabriel Faget
Okay, that's a fun name. Okay, so we're doing those kind of names now, are we?
I don't know how to say that surname, but it's funny to say Fajit. No, like it's probably like Fajit, maybe Fajit. I don't know, but it's
and frankly, I don't want to know.
Yeah, I don't. It stars Demi Moore, Margaret Qualley, and Dennis Quaid. It was released on September the 20th in the UK and United States. Interestingly, about 2 months later in France. 1.5. So yeah, it was also released at Cannes, of course. I think Anora actually won the Palme d'Or at Cannes. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, it shows what they know.
So Michael, can you tell me what the budget was for The Substance?
Right. Okay. So this movie obviously has a lot more special effects. It's also like a lot more kind of like vibrant and feels like very produced, and it's got more of a cast. So all those things mean this movie would have cost more money. Having said that, I have no idea who this director is, so I'm not sure like how much of a budget she'd command, and maybe maybe she was able to do a lot with not so much. I'm gonna say 20 million.
Okay, that's a good guess. 17.5 million.
You have no idea how terrifying I find it every single time I say a guess.
Okay, what about the box office?
I'm gonna say 100 million.
No. Okay.
No, I'm not. Okay, I mean, I like that you've. So I'm glad that I said that because I feel like maybe I've got some information. Is there anything you can think of to tell me, like in terms of like streaming or anything like that, or is it just normal? Okay. So yeah. Now, I mean, like I say, my wife had heard of this movie.
Yeah. There you go. That's a good indication.
So you know what? I mean, I will just go for 100 million. Why not?
77.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I thought you'd guess a little bit lower. But I thought you were going to guess, around, again, like 40. I was like, nah, it's a lot higher. Because, normies, not to call your wife a normie, but...
She's a little bit of a normie. She's a normie compared to me, if you can believe such a thing.
Wow, that's incredible.
I know, it's crazy.
Who is
to imagine anyone would be.
Yeah, but this movie was well known. I know people... Well, yeah, it was talked about because I think it's quite unique. So, Michael, did you like the substance?
This is... I feel like in both of these movies... I've really like the question of like, did I like them is such a weird question because like this movie, it got a very strong reaction from me, but it's one of those things where I do think to myself, like, you could like, make a prosthetic penis and have a movie where someone's cutting through it with a hacksaw and I'd be like, oh, I got a really strong reaction from it. But I don't know if that necessarily means, it's a good movie. I guess on balance, I did like it. I have criticisms. And I also don't know entirely how much I enjoyed watching enjoyed the experience of watching it based on just how like frankly gross it is at some points. And yeah, so I definitely wouldn't like rave about this movie because I feel like you could say, oh, this movie is like a really intense, subversive art house. All the like positive things you could say about a movie like this. Like I'm not in that camp.
No. I don't know who anyone who is in that camp, to be honest.
I don't know. I feel like sometimes with like weird movies, some people will be like, oh, it's good because it's very weird, and like that means it has like a big impact.
Yeah, but yeah. I think people are kind of dismissive of this. I know it got nominated for Best Picture, and it's not an awful movie. So, did you think it was okay, basically?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
Which is the thing is like the reason why I feel so like weird about saying that is because obviously it feels so weird to watch a movie like this with everything that happens in it. But yeah, it was okay.
Yeah, no, it was fine. It was a lot of crazy stuff, of course, happens, and it has an interesting plot. The premise is interesting.
Yes.
But yeah, it has it has these themes which are again quite obvious. They're not subtle.
I was gonna say like I have a few things to say about that when we get to them.
Yes, and I say the plot is interesting. To be honest, what happens in the movie is like this is going to be the tension in the movie, the conflict between Margaret Qualley and Demi Moore. Elizabeth and Sue. The younger and older versions of themselves. That's going to be the conflict, the tension that they have between each other, and that just keeps going on, and until of course it reaches its climax. So I think and again, is the theme that interesting? Not really. Again, it's kind of obvious. Is the body horror? Is the body horror and all the the practical effects? Is that interesting? Well, not really to me. I don't really care so much for that stuff. But maybe if you like that, then that's good. But yeah, you can see how despite the on the surface craziness, if you actually delve a little bit deeper, it's when you actually have to evaluate how good the movie is. It's okay. It's fine. So I guess let's
Yeah.
get into it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, how many nitpicks do you have?
I haven't got anything for this one, actually.
I've got 2.
Okay.
So I don't know if you know Coriel Fajit. She referenced The Shining in this film. The bathroom is made to look like the one in The Shining.
Oh, really? Okay.
And I don't know why, because I don't know what the connection is to The Shining. You know.
Yeah, it's like, it sounds like a George Lucas moment to me.
Yeah, it's
It's like I saw this movie in the 70s, so I decided I would make my movie like it.
It's just such a foreign thing to do. It's like, I love The Shining with a cool movie. I make a horror movie and put the bathroom in that movie, in my movie. Cool, eh? No, but it's the Shining is about a middle-aged man going insane, and the I guess the indictment of the average American male, or the white male in America, and its history and everything. There's a lot of themes that go into that.
That's why it went broke.
And this movie, it's just like it's about women having body issues. I just don't see the connection to The Shining. I'm sorry, but
the message in both is that men are terrible.
Yeah, well, yeah, I guess so. That could be the message, I guess. But it's a pretty thin connection to deliberately try and replicate what The Shining looked like.
That's what like $20 million of the budget went towards, just like renovating the bathroom.
It was 17 million overall, but okay.
I forgot what it was.
Yeah, well,
so I guessed 20 million, didn't I?
Yeah. Also, why, this is my other nitpick, why would an aerobics, a fitness show, be popular in the modern day? I guess because Elizabeth Sparkle is this old school legend. Well, yeah, old school. Like she was a Hollywood star back in the day. Some people are still fans of her and will watch this aerobic show, even though it's like an 80s or 90s thing. And I think are in like the year 2023 or 2024 at least.
And there's no Russians in here to confuse whether this was made earlier.
Yeah, so I don't know if the show would be on the TV. I guess it maybe would, because she was a star back in the day, and we'll just keep doing it until the ratings fall off.
Yeah.
But I don't know why they would try and renew the show. Why it wouldn't just get cancelled.
You know what, Luke? This is actually something I was thinking, because I was thinking, like, surely, like, a TV show like this would only be enjoyed by older women anyway.
Yes.
So, like, why would they actually want... Like, I would imagine, like, a show like this, especially in a world where pornography exists, so it's not like dudes, like, have to, like, tune into this for softcore porn. There should have been a moment where someone said, ever since the pornography ban under Project 2025... We've got to have sexy, we've got to try and sneak softcore porn onto the airwaves.
Yeah.
Because that's the only reason why anyone below the age of 60 would be watching like this show.
Yeah, I mean, you think about the people tuning in. Again, this is why I don't think, why would you renew the show? Okay, there's this attractive woman who's doing this.
Have her do something else.
This fitness thing. Okay, what would she do, Michael?
Weather Girl.
Okay. Oh, I think you okay, right, fine.
Sorry, I wouldn't suggest anything untoward.
Well, yeah, that's what I thought you were suggesting, and now
I'd have a star in Anora.
Now you think now I think you were indeed suggesting what I thought you were at first. Yes, you definitely were, because I know your mind. But yeah, I think this attractive girl is on this daytime TV show where I assume it's daytime, where they say it's in the morning, where she's doing these fitness workout things, and it's like, yeah, okay, right, she's attractive, but plenty of people on TV are attractive, and is this specific thing, this specific concept, is it popular today? No, it's not. It's you don't have these fucking aerobics things on TV.
She's also on a late night talk show, by the way. That's how much this is. Like Jimmy Fallon's like, we've got to get the woman who's like on the doing the morning aerobics show.
I know. It's again, this is a French director who doesn't know what the fuck she's doing. Like, Jane Fonda, it was popular.
Yeah, like it's just recently showing over there.
Yeah.
So how like that's the new thing.
Yeah, it's just like you don't. I don't get that. And what you could have instead, again, because you want to make the point of she is being replaced by a younger, more attractive version of herself. Okay, what about if she stars in like a soap, like a TV show, where she gets killed off because she's getting too old, and then this new girl comes to town in this soap and she's Margaret Qualley. That would be more realistic than this. I just found the whole aerobics thing like stupid.
By the way, I did arrive at a nitpick. I realized one I had. This movie has too many actors in too significant of a position whose surnames start with Qua. Like Quaid and Qualley.
That's good. Anyway, let's get onto the plot.
Yes. So, a fading celebrity decides to use a black market drug, a cell-replicating substance that temporarily creates a younger, better version of herself. Yeah. I mean, you mentioned the idea that the premise is good, and yeah, the premise is
It's
good.
interesting. It's interesting. Yeah.
Obviously, right away it established like there's no way like scientifically any of this makes sense. So we're already like established that this is kind of more of a absurdist kind of horror movie.
Yeah, and I think of course we'll talk about the overall theme. We talked about, of course, Anora. Women being objectified. This is sort of the same thing. What women only have value in how good they look. This is what happens to women in the entertainment industry. They are judged purely on whether they are attractive or not. But I think that is something, again, talking about the theme. It's not a bad theme, of course, but I think it's well known to everyone. This isn't some sort of new Coraline Fajit, you're really bringing something to our attention which none of us had any idea about. I think this is well known. But I think maybe the meta aspects of Demi Moore being involved in this movie makes that a bit more interesting. But yeah, I just wasn't that interested in the theme because I was like, well, of course, yes, and then it's quite on the nose throughout the movie, which we'll get into.
Yeah. By the way, like, have you like the obvious thing I was thinking throughout this movie is what's it called? Not what's that movie about the people who are addicted to drugs and there's a woman who gets addicted to dieting pills so she can go on the TV.
I don't know.
Requiem for a Dream.
Requiem, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Like I was like thinking to myself like this idea of like. Because I remember that movie, and she like goes crazy because she's like obsessed with being hot for this guy on the TV, and I was like, that's like a very similar movie, and that like it's similarly kind of wacky with what's happening.
Doesn't really say that much, and it's kind of average, but yeah.
Yes. Anyway, so yes, let's.
I just want to say, by the way, there's a lot of quick editing in this movie, and I think that helps in terms of like your attention span. But no, I think there's a lack of dialogue as well because the director is French. And I think that did have something to do with it. It's not a very realistic world, of course, which makes sense, I guess, as well. Yeah. Yeah,
absolutely. All right, so on her 50th birthday, Elizabeth Sparkle, a faded Academy Award-winning film star, is fired from her aerobics TV show by the producer Harvey due to her age. Elizabeth crashes her car while seeing a billboard of herself being taken down. Yeah, I mean, kind of like you say early on, we get it pretty firmly communicated that she's too old.
I love that phrase, firmly communicated.
Yes.
Look how her star has faded. Her literal like Hollywood Walk of Fame star.
Which I was thinking, like, does that actually happen? Like, do people like you think because the problem with that is it's kind of like it like makes you wonder. So like actually really famous people who are still considered really famous. Like I don't know Alfred. I don't know how like one of the most famous, or like Marlon Brando. I assume he's got to have one. Yeah. Like is his star all like cracked and neglected? I would assume not.
No, I mean I don't know.
So they just like selected. They just like imagine how like being the guy who's like in charge of how important is this person such that we're actually going to bother to maintain their star. That would be it'd be a godlike power.
Yeah. So yeah. Also, you have to decide like okay, has this person's star faded enough?
Have they fell off?
Yeah, how much have they fell off? You have to make that correct. You have to make that judgment. And also, because she's getting older, there's wrinkles on her face, so obviously her star has cracked as well. You see that? But yeah, again, it's quite obvious. Firmly communicated. We're going to use that phrase from now on.
Yes.
And also when the producer, Harvey, is eating the shrimp, he's taking out the shrimp and actually spitting out the shell. That's what happens to women in Hollywood.
They chew you up and spit you out.
Yeah, exactly. That was just the phrase I was gonna say. But yeah, so again, it's quite obvious. Yeah.
A young nurse gives her a flash drive advertising the substance, a drug that promises a younger, more beautiful, more perfect version of herself. Elizabeth, desperate, orders the substance. Yes. The one thing I'll say, again, this is kind of like following on, but I think it's an important thing to take note of. Obviously, like, this is not something a normal human being would do. Like, obviously, this is something... No. And I think it's just, like, worth noting, to establish our parameters here, this is not like a horror movie, like, I don't know, 28 Days Later, just to pick a topical example of that new game, where, like, the point is the characters are behaving like rationally and you're invested in what they're doing, and therefore the like tension comes in. Oh no, like how are they going to handle the situation? Because as soon as this woman like goes into a like a crack den to pick up this strange drug, you're like, okay, this is going to be a movie that's more about like the kind of art and theme and stuff.
That's the point though. Women in the entertainment industry, they're so desperate. This
exactly.
Is
what, this is like an exaggeration.
Yeah, this is what they'll do. And also, I do think on the plot, I thought there would be some more deliberation from her. Maybe she goes to the hospital to find the person that gave her the drive, but can't find him because, he's old now. Because that could be something that could happen, but we get straight into it. But yeah, again, these are the beauty standards that women have to abide by in Hollywood. So she's that desperate, so she goes for it. Yeah.
The other thing is just before, because I think I used that word firmly communicated. There was one moment that kind of like it slightly soured my impression of the film, which is when she has, I think it's around this moment, where she has the flowers and it says "You were great," and like there's a wide shot at first, and like obviously you can clearly read it, and I read it and I was like, oh, it says "You were great," like that's like kind of clever and like subtle that like they've chosen that specific wording. And then, like, obviously it does a, like, close-up of the word were. And it was just, like, one of those moments where I was like, oh, it's kind of nice when a movie gives you something to kind of notice and pick up on yourself, that they've, like, deliberately done that. And then to be like, look, see, it says were, and, like, draw attention to it. It's just one of those things where it makes it a little bit less subtle. Yeah. Anyway, so Elizabeth injects the serum and convulses as her body generates a different, younger version of herself from a slit in her back. Yeah, so I think this was kind of gross.
Yeah, look, I know this is body horror, again, and... You say it's gross, you don't like it. I'm just talking about how realistic it is. I just think, it's very unrealistic, but I guess because the world that we are in seems quite unrealistic. It seems kind of crazy. You kind of just go with it. I think that's
I guess so.
Yeah. I do like how the younger version of herself, she acts like a monster or like an animal once she gets out of the body, for the first time. But yeah, what were you going to say?
It is gross. I will say, like, this opening thing, I think there is like a talent in kind of a bit like what you said about her being like a monster or like an animal. That sense of it being like very unfamiliar and strange, and I think like there's an initial excitement, exhilaration, like, oh, this is like a crazy premise. And later on, I think it maybe gets a bit excessive, but I did actually like it too. The two bodies must switch consciousness every 7 days, with the inactive body remaining unconscious and fed with a weekly food supply. Daily injections of stabilizer fluid extracted from the original body are required to prevent the new body from deteriorating. Yeah.
Well, I was going to ask, do the rules make sense?
Well, yeah.
I mean, the thing is, the body that is not being used, I think, needs to be put in some sort of... Do you know what a cryo chamber is?
Yeah, like a freezy thing, frozy. I was thinking about like bed sores. That's the first thought I had. Like, do I get bed sores?
Well, yeah. Well, so the body needs to be preserved, I think, to make it realistic, and you can just put it in ice. But I guess it will lessen the artistic vision of having, the original body that isn't being used. It's just dumped on the bathroom floor like it's worthless, because that is how older women are conditioned to think of their bodies like that. So I guess it's the message that this worthless thing. It's just on the bathroom floor. And if you put it in a special chamber, that would lessen that artistic vision. So I understand it in that regard, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So the new body, who names herself Sue, is an overnight sensation after auditioning to be Elizabeth's replacement and is offered the chance by Harvey to host the network's New Year's Eve show. Do you think that Sue is very physically attractive? Just because, like, so one of the jokes I was going to make until obviously the like subsequent content of the film made me realize that like kind of overshadowed this. So I was like, man, there's like lots of just like sexy shots in this movie. Like originally when I was first watching this movie, I was imagining, as I always do whenever I'm watching a movie, constantly you asking me, so Michael, what did you think of this movie? And I was thinking, I know I'd 100% say, I'd say, well, Luke, I'm a straight man, so yes, I did. And like obviously I was thinking that. Yeah. I was thinking that as I saw, like all these like shots of this hot woman, but then obviously they kind of ruin it later on. But yeah, this Quayle thing.
I like how your first take on it is the misogynistic take.
Yeah, is that she's hot. Yeah. But like this Quayle person, is she actually a good actress? And how can you tell? Because like she's attractive, so maybe she's just getting all these roles because she's good looking.
What do you mean by all these roles?
Oh, like this one and the guy, the girl in Death Note. and a random side character in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Yeah,
no, I mean, well, we're going to talk about casting next. We're not really going to talk about her because, she just is meant to be this attractive younger version of Demi Moore.
Yeah.
That's what she, that's who she is.
She does a good job at that.
Yeah. So she manages to obtain this position as this, what is it, like aerobics instructor?
Yeah.
Because she knows all the moves and what the producers want, I guess. And again, nobody cares where she came from. But
I was thinking that, like, surely they'd run some kind of background check. Like, where's your bank account?
That's fine. It doesn't matter. Yeah.
Yeah, like, honestly, if this happened to me, I'd just spend, like, the entire week just procrastinating on the basic things I'd have to do to actually start an entire fake life.
Yeah.
I'm barely even able to start my one life I have already. Anyway, casting. Fajia wanted to cast Elizabeth Sparkle first, seeking a real-life icon, and landed on Demi Moore. GIA Jane 2. Can't wait to see it. Though she initially doubted Moore would take the role, Moore, intrigued by the script's themes on aging, saw the film as a risk that could either succeed or fail dramatically. That is, to be fair, what a risk is.
Yeah, but I think, there are a lot of scenes of her, naked. And again, it could be brave, it could be bold, it could be like, wow, what a disaster.
Yeah, like this could be one of those movies, a bit like a kind of Brendan Fraser thing, where it's like, oh, this like previously kind of actor who's considered like not that significant now, like this could be a career revitalizer where you're like, oh wow, like she's back and she's better than ever.
Yeah, and of course she has been nominated for Best Actress, and
so it did succeed.
Yeah, and will it kind of subvert the movie if she wins Best Actress? Show me you can be old and disgusting and win Best Actress, because Margaret Qualley has not been nominated for Best Supporting Actress at the Oscars. Yeah, but I guess maybe if Mikey Madsen wins it for Anora, well, she's young and attractive and. Yeah.
I mean, we've seen young Demi Moore because she was in Striptease.
Yeah, she was, of course. Yeah, and again,
should have done that film alongside Anora.
Well, there is this meta aspect. Of course, she was much bigger back in the 90s when she was, and now she is a faded star. So yeah, again, I think Vajit wanting to cast an icon like Demi Moore, who of course was one of the most famous actresses in the world 30 years ago. Now no one really cares. Well, now they care again, so it's a nice story.
Yeah, I actually saw she was the most paid actor of, I believe, 1990, or the highest paid actor of 1996.
Yeah, that's not surprising.
Like, crazy, because like at the same time, I'm not sure how many movies I could actually name that she was in.
She was in that one with Tom Cruise, A Few Gay Men.
Oh, okay, yeah, I like that one. Okay. Yeah, and of course they were all gay because she was so old. Ugh. Anyway, so while Sue lives a confident and hedonistic life, Elizabeth becomes a self-hating recluse. This is interesting. I think the only like problem with this is like I feel like this is an aging problem that only applies if you're in this specific industry, because like normal it's kind of like when I think about it, you think about it and you're like, well, this is a bit it's a bit privileged in a way, because the only women complaining about this are like the women in showbiz, which is a very good business to be in. But meanwhile, it's like when you actually think about like old women in real life, they're just living their best lives.
Does this apply overall to women, or is it just specifically women in the entertainment?
And I've answered your question already.
In the entertainment industry, because of course, women in the entertainment industry have to care about their looks, but a woman in accounts, I don't think she really needs to take the substance to keep her job. So, but you could say, oh, it's a universal thing. All women, feel the crushing, weight of beauty standards. But again, I think it specifically applies to women in this field more. I will also say, I think again it's quite obvious. Again, on the nose. People treat you different when you're younger and hotter, like her neighbor did. Like it's just not subtle at all, and I just think it's quite shit. And again, I kind of like when the older body gets locked away. That's that has a symbolic.
Yes,
it's a symbolic scene.
It has a resonance.
Yes. Also, there are, and I think this is what you were getting onto before. There are a lot of provocative shots at this part of the movie of obviously Margaret Qualley.
I hadn't noticed.
Yes, and I think this French director was
lesbian.
She was insistent that we see this, otherwise we won't get the point about women being sexualized and this being their only value in the entertainment industry. As like you see how clever I am with these shots of the ass. There you go. So you are
look at the ass.
You are viewing things from the producers, from the Harvey guy.
I would also recommend my movie Cuties.
Okay.
Had a very similar idea.
That's very racist.
Because obviously the old women were not very hot, but the young women. Oh.
No, again, just very.
Because like the younger they get, and also they're French.
No, I don't know. You're being xenophobic. Not all.
Francophobic.
But yeah, I guess the point is, it's the male gaze. That's we're seeing things through the male gaze, and that the male gaze dominates Hollywood. And I don't really think that aspect is as true as it was back in the day. I think things have gotten better in that regard. Although maybe Trump's back in the White House now, things are going to turn again.
It's like that guy who was like, remember that time when Sydney Sweeney like hosted SNL and like she was there with like her boobs and stuff, and that guy like tweeted like wokeness is dead. That was like so funny. Like that's what wokeness was, that like you can't have hot women.
Yeah.
Elizabeth and Sue begin to view themselves as individuals and grow to despise each other. Elizabeth resents Sue for her disregard of the switching schedule, which exacerbates her aging, while Sue is appalled by Elizabeth's self-loathing and binge-eating. Following a destructive episode as Elizabeth, Sue stockpiles on stabilizer fluid and refuses to switch back. So there's like a lot going on here. Yeah. I have two things to say. One, like, what do you kind of make of the whole like thing about, like, it's something that's repeatedly stressed, that there isn't actually a difference between the two of them, and essentially that, like, I think, like, really, it's probably you're a point about self-destruction.
Yeah, you're just starting to hate yourself, which
like, that's it.
We'll go into in a bit.
Yeah, like, I was thinking about that. You know, like, people talk about, like people say, you know, that's a problem for future Michael. It's like people say often about, like, drinking. Like, I feel like similar.
Yeah, but yeah, the old man, who, of course, at one point talks to her, says, you know, you wonder if the older person deserves to even exist. And again, that is I think, because if you place your value on your looks, on your appearance, then yeah, obviously you're going to start to think that. As Colleen Fagier goes into in the next paragraph.
She began writing the film in her 40s, a period when she was confronting negative thoughts about her relevance and appearance. I really started to think and have these voices in my head like, now your life is over, no one is going to care about you. She described the process of making the film as a way to confront and release the internalized violence and tied to societal expectations about women's bodies and aging, using the body horror genre as a weapon of expression.
Yeah, that was quite obvious what she is doing. yeah. I like that from Wikipedia, because it's like, well, yeah, obviously she's doing that. Yeah. But also, again, if you're having these negative thoughts about your relevance and appearance, okay, I guess everybody has that to some degree when they get older. But you would be thinking, you would be having this internalized violence. I mean, I think that only really applies to you if your job,
crazy,
if your occupation, if your job and occupation specifically depended on your looks. I mean, I don't really know who this woman is, but if she wasn't as attractive, would she, still be having a successful life, or is it just, her own thoughts? And it's nothing to do with her material conditions. It's just, the battle going on inside her head, which could make sense, but then the movie is specifically about a woman in the entertainment industry.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, for me personally, I find the kind of like generalized like worry about aging to be like more interesting. I watched the movie Naiad recently, which is about a really old swimmer who's upset that she's not able to swim anymore. And yeah, like, definitely, you really probably can't swim when you're an old lady. I mean, you can, but just slowly. But yeah, like, obviously, that general sense of time's ticking on by. We're all gonna die someday. Like, that's obviously bad. But this idea of like, oh, you just can't live your life at all. I think obviously no one should have that attitude, because even if you're in entertainment, like the entertainment industry, you can like settle down, like have a nice. The main issue is she doesn't have a husband. I mean, not to say like, well, let me rephrase that. The main issue is she doesn't have anyone who she knows personally.
Well, yeah, she doesn't have any friends.
That's
either.
It. Yes,
she's just very lonely, which again is a separate issue. Which
if that issue was solved, she'd probably be all right.
Yeah, I imagine like Demi Moore would have some friends.
Yeah.
And honestly, like, you're 50, okay, you feel like you're washed up, you can retire. I think this again, it's a very specific, and again, maybe, okay, right, you can feel annoyed at the fact that you feel washed up, and you could do something drastic like this. But again, I think that overall, then you're not critiquing female beauty standards. You're critiquing this drive to be, celebrated, which again I think this movie does actually go into in the last part of the movie. That is the real issue. This drive to be famous, and everybody loves you, and
everybody wants to rule the world.
Yeah, everybody. Yeah, you want to be this celebrity that everybody likes. But again, I think this only applies to a very specific occupation. Basically, most women won't, because they have no chance of being a celebrity. So they have no chance of hosting this prestigious New Year's Eve show. Yeah. So yeah, it doesn't apply to them if we make the theme more about, oh yeah, everyone will chase this, and especially women will chase. Well, women will do these things and hate themselves to chase this celebrity status. Again, that narrows things down and doesn't make the theme as wide as it could be.
Yeah. Also, like, one very quick thing. I don't really get what the point is of. I suppose maybe it makes sense. So like, just the whole thing about I've forgotten the name of the Demi Moore's character. I'm just going to say Demi Moore. She eats loads of food. I guess the only thing there is it's, I guess, about like being self-destructive, giving up on yourself. I guess like that's all it's supposed to be. Because I was thinking like there's not really like any real connection between growing. I guess like, or is it like growing old and being fat? I don't know. It was just like I was like thinking to myself, that's like a very specific thing. Where I was like, so you get old and you eat loads of food. Is that like a thing?
Yeah, I mean, it's just, self-loathing.
Yeah, I guess that's it, yeah.
Yeah,
Because people like to eat when they're sad. So, Sue runs out of stabilizer fluid and switches back to replenish the fluid. Elizabeth then finds herself transformed into a hunchback. Oh, Notre Dame. Elizabeth orders a serum to terminate Sue. However, Elizabeth, still craving the admiration that Sue's celebrity provides, resuscitates Sue, leaving both conscious. Realizing Elizabeth's intent to terminate her, Sue attacks and kills her. Yeah, this is like this is really quite something. This massive fight.
Yeah,
it's wild.
Well, yeah, I guess the overall symbolic nature of the fight is the need to achieve that this status will literally kill you. Again, it's not that subtle.
Sue's body begins to rapidly deteriorate. She attempts to create a new version of herself. This results in the creation of a grotesque, mutated body, Monstro Elisa Sue. Monstro returns to the studio and attempts to host the show, but the audience erupts into chaos and one decapitates her, only for more weird shit to happen. The design was inspired by the Elephant Man and the Fly. Margaret Qualley endured 6-hour prosthetic applications and described the experience as torture, with the suit causing acne that took over a year to heal. I see, so women are still being exploited in the industry.
Yes.
They did the thing.
And they did it for the art. They sacrificed themselves for the art. Yeah, and that's how you got to look at it. But yeah, I just put only for more weird shit to happen because it was like, yeah, just a bunch of weird shit goes on.
Yeah,
so.
like it is crazy. But again, like I'll refer you back to my prosthetic penis being cut with a hacksaw thing.
Yeah.
Like, you can, like, make something crazy.
If you like body horror, you'll like it, but I don't really care for it. It's like, oh, that's crazy. Yeah. It's meant to be crazy, and it is crazy. So there you go. I can appreciate how, the practical effects and what the actresses put themselves through. Obviously, what Margaret Qualley experienced sounded horrific, but, yeah, that's what these kind of prosthetics, that's what always happens.
Yeah, it's like those bloody Hobbit feet.
Yeah, it didn't blow my mind.
Oh, it didn't blow my mind either, Luke. So you're in welcome company. But it blew her mind when she got decapitated.
Yeah, that's good.
Monstro flees the studio, but explodes into viscera. Elizabeth's face detaches from the gore, crawling onto a neglected star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. She smiles as she hallucinates being admired before melting into a puddle of blood, which is cleaned up by a floor scrubber the next day. This is one of those things that simultaneously I'm like, oh, like that's kind of like fun that they did that, because obviously like it's full circle, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
But it's also like at the same time like obviously obvious in terms of imagery.
Yes, it hammers home the point so much.
Yes, that's it.
I'll just conclude right now saying, I think that's the overall issue with the movie, to be honest. The point is hammered home. You get the point right away, and then it's repeated over and over again. And yeah, if you want to make it about, the admiration that, people seek out, and maybe specifically women, and what they'll do to their bodies and how they hate themselves, again, I think it does. I just can't imagine a random woman in middle America, caring this much about how she looks to this extent. Again, there is this, of course, people are insecure, of course they are, and people hate their younger selves, and there's beauty standards and all of that shit. But at the end of the day, I think this is something that is quite specific, and I don't really think that most women, when they see like an attractive younger woman, think of internalized violence, unless again they are in the specific industry and feel like washed up. And so that's my issue overall. And again, the plot isn't really that interesting either. The craziness with the body horror doesn't really interest me that much either. So I'm forced to say this is pretty okay. I'm going to give it like a 6.5, despite all the craziness going on.
So for me, I mean, this film is definitely crazy, and for me, like, it's like I didn't really enjoy looking at the body horror. A while ago, I watched a really gross movie, and I said, what, I'm going to man up and not be a coward anymore about gross, squeamish things. But I thought, actually, the fact that I'm kind of grossed out when I see a load of horrible, disgusting blood, that's a pretty normal thing about me. So I'm gonna hold on to that one piece of normalcy in my life. And as such, I'm pleased to say that I actually found it super gross and unpleasant to watch all of these horrible, disgusting things happen, and an old woman getting her bloodied face smashed against the mirror.
You're just a pussy.
I'm a hero.
That's clear.
I'm an alpha because I'm not afraid of your judgment. As for the movie, I mean, basically, like I kind of made a point of saying, this isn't like a movie where you're like, I hope that this person ends up okay, because obviously very early on you realize this is going to be a more like artistic, exaggerated, surreal exploration of these ideas, and as such the question is, if it's just about exploring the ideas, does it do a good job? But you've kind of already done my work for me here. Now in terms of rating, God.
Come on.
I'm actually giving this one. I'm gonna give this one a low 5. I'm gonna say that this one's just based on it being unpleasant and not really having that much of a point.
Yeah. You know what? Actually, you know what? I'm not going to give it a 6.5. That was what I put originally. I'm going to give it a 6 because having talked about it, I'm like, you know what? It's not as good as I think. Yeah.
And I will say, look, just so you don't feel like you're the only loser here. Sometimes I actually lock in a you know, like a score, but then like what I'll do is I'll have like a bit of leeway. I'll be like, I might go like up or down on it depending on how I feel once you've really spoken it through.
Yeah, because I think it was more negative than expected. Anyway, next week we are reviewing Amelia Perez.
Yes.
That has,
are we also doing Wicked? Or?
And yes, and Wicked. But yeah, I was just going to see Amelia Perez. Wow, that's going to be one hell of a movie to talk about. I can't wait, especially if it wins Best Picture, but I don't think it will. Anyway, so join us for that next week. We have been selecting and reflecting on Anora and the Substance, two other Best Picture nominees for the 2025 Oscars. So yeah, who have you been, Michael?
I've been Michael.
I've been Luke. See you next time. Goodbye.
Guten Tag.